Thank you very much for being here. I hope you can all hear me well. I'm Raphael Minder. I'm a correspondent for the Financial Times. I relocated to Warsaw in June. I cover Central Europe, and it's a huge pleasure to be here in London among very young, bright people. And I hope that some of the discussion that we have today will inspire you to do even greater things than what you're already doing. I'm not going to introduce the speakers because you have them already presented, but also for the sake of those who are not used to Spanish lunching hours, I'm going to try to make it as quick as possible. Get to the subject matter. We're talking talent. At the moment, we're all following very, very closely the efforts of very courageous people in Ukraine fighting Russia. My question is, those who are not in the battlefield, those who have a lot of talent and can contribute in other ways, how best can they do so? I will perhaps start by asking Magda, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I do believe that this is this moment in history where we need to decide what we do and what we do not do. And I do believe that on what to do, I follow the rule that you for sure have a superpower. All of us have some sort of superpower. And I would encourage all of us to focus on that superpower for the cause you choose to support. For many Poles, for many people all around the world, the war in Ukraine is defining this cause. And I do believe that, you know, in 10 or 20 years from now, we will still remember where we were on the 24th of February. But we will also remember how have we supported the Ukrainian cause and whether this is something we are proud about, or whether this is something that, you know, we will be thinking like we could have done something more. And this is the moment where we still have time to decide how we will feel in 5, 10, 20 years from now.
Franciszek?
Yeah. If I can chip in here, and I talked to lots of Ukrainians who have this dilemma, like what to do right now. In our office, for example, we have a team of Ukrainians because we created Ukrainian Virtual Hub, and I am also talking to some students from Ukraine, and there is this discussion whether to study or go back, and for them it's very emotional. Like, for example, Daria, who is a consultant, we work together on the project. She said that she won the most prestigious scholarship in Sweden at the beginning of February, and she was about to go there, and then she had to go to the basement, and she told me it's like in Maslow law, she was on the top thinking about what she can do in life, and then she was moved to very basic needs. And for her, it was a big dilemma. She's right now with us, and she says that when she has a training or project discussions, she knows that her family is in places which are bombarded, and it's always a dilemma where to be. My conviction is that that you also need human capital to rebuild Ukraine at certain point, because without this, that they will not win the war. It's like, I know it's hard to compare, but I remember when I was studying in UK or in Belgium, I had a dilemma to go back or not to go back. It's a different hierarchy of needs. I decided to go back, but I was happy I could study abroad because I could enrich my culture. And I think it's important that they educate and they come back, because right now I listened today to a podcast. Everybody's fighting in Ukraine, but after each war, it's so hard to adopt people who are fighting to rebuild. They are completely mentally different. So it's for me, it's quite important to also educate and build human capital outside Ukraine, and especially in Western Europe, because like Anton, who is with us, another consultant, he said that there are lots of Russian students who got educated in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, and it's a vacuum right now. So, but they have to get educated somewhere. So my belief is that, and there are many students here, that it's important also to do the education.
Alex, perhaps as a Ukrainian on this panel, do you have a different perspective on this?
No, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. I don't have a different perspective. The only thing is that I know that in our audience it's mostly Polish students, and I sort of tailored my thoughts more maybe to this audience. And I, first of all, wanted to say that this 24th of February we will all remember, and I believe very much that ultimately this is the war is about values. It is indeed the war of independence for Ukraine, but it's also the war for defense of liberal values, of liberal societies. And if you listen to Putin, he talks about it, he wages the war with the West, with the liberal society. And so, of course, those of us from Ukraine never expected that Ukraine will be that country where this battle will begin, so to speak, like in literally heated terms. But also I wanted to say that Polish people have demonstrated remarkable support and resilience along with the Ukrainians, because I think that there's literally, with the US, UK, Poland really stands out in how much has been done by Polish people for this cause and for the Ukrainian people, and I think it will never be forgotten. And I think that there are these questions about today and the future. I think today we're still in the very middle of it, and I think that all of us, Ukrainians or Western people, I think that we should focus on winning the war. And there are a few things we can do, whether we are in the relevant field or not, and that is making sure that the commitment in our countries where we live, where we work, to support Ukraine militarily are there, that it's maintained, that the financial support is provided, and that the sanctions are further strengthened so that the regime that wages the war can reduce its capacity to do so. And I think in here, every one of us can make a difference. I can assure you, even my children here in the UK have done a lot. There's so much we all can do in this regard. Looking forward, I think that it will be, if the war is, if Ukraine prevails, and let's say Western society, with Western society support, there will be a lot going on in Ukraine. As many of you know, but maybe some don't, there's already an estimate by the World Bank that Ukraine will need about $350 billion to rebuild. And unfortunately, that number is rising every day because there's more destruction and more calamity going on in Ukraine. But it is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to change Ukraine, to create new jobs, to support transformation of the country, to integrate it in the Western society. And I think that many of the people even in this audience could have a role to play, because there will be, Western institutions coming in, Western companies. There will be new businesses being created. For example, I saw the statistics that Ukrainian IT sector increased by 13% this year, which is remarkable. So there's a war going on. So there is, moreover, people who live even internationally, many Ukrainians mobilized, they ended up designing, bots that tracked Russian soldiers. They designed IT systems that were used in the battlefield. So I think that everybody has a role to play. Going to education, I think that the most remarkable thing about Western education and being in centers like the UK, London, or in the Western centers is that we develop relationships. We identify with others from other countries. And I think that, I hope that you have a chance to meet some Ukrainian students in your studies. Please engage with them, you know, become buddies, because I hope that this is something for the long term. We're there together for the long run.
Brunon, any thoughts on how to harness the talent right now?
So, thank you, the other panelists, because I think you left me not much to add. But I would like to raise it once again to what Magda said. There are important moments in life. My generation was living in enormously interesting times because we've seen the collapse of the communism. For my generation, when you ask any of us, what did you do on 13th of December 1981, everybody can answer that question. For many of us, what did you do of September 11 was also an obvious element where you were. The start of the war is something that you will be talking to your grandchildren, as we do, in exactly the same manner. Second, Alexei said that this is the war of values. It is the war of values. And one more, it's not the only war that is ongoing, and this is not the last one. You will see more of that. Why? Because we are at the clashes of civilization and new imperia, which is coming to the historic life of ourselves. So, whether you like it or not, you are living in the interesting times. And in interesting times, you will find out, and I can talk about it from experience of my pretty long time, compared with you, of course, is that the most important issue is what values are important for you. And you need to decide that right now, and it's better that you will be on the side of truth and proper values than on the side on undecisiveness. This is the choice. Undecisiveness is the wrong choice. You have to get involved. I'm not saying that you have to do something extraordinary or heroic. No. But knowing what is good and what is bad is very important for shaping your life for the future, because that also what you will have to report to your grandchildren when the proper moment comes. This is not the Russian-Ukraine war. It's the war of values when our Ukrainian friends and brothers are on the front line. But this is our war. And we are all involved. Like people in Lviv. Oh, sorry, thank you. I would say for us living in Poland, it's a bit more obvious because we have seen the flow of refugees coming to us and we have adopted them to our houses. As you know, that was at least, calculation is, 500,000 Polish people who took their families of Ukrainians to our houses. So important thing is, and that's what Putin is counting on, that we as people who are living in comfort and in the top of the Maslow, that we will forget that something is happening at our border. It's not our border, it's in our country. And it's very important that people in the UK, in Germany and in Spain will understand exactly the same. I, of course, don't want to sound to, let's say, boasting or whatever. But honestly, there are moments that some elements of imperialism has to be stopped. Soviet-Russian imperialism was stopped a few times. Now it's high time. Unfortunately, it's Ukrainians who have to pay the price this time. But that's very important. So wherever you think, just make the decision. That decision is vital and will remain with your whole life. So you better choose well. Thank you.
Magda.
And to close on building on your superpowers that I referred to, that all of you have, think about some ideas. I bet that in this audience there are people that are excellent in fundraising. Pick up 5 students from Ukraine and share with them your fundraising hacks. I bet there are amazing people doing project management. Do the same. Scale it to 5 Ukrainian colleagues. it's not about just like yourself collecting money and sending to whatever is the donation activity. And we could go on and on. That's why think about your superpower and try to scale it to 5 people in Ukraine. This could be your starting contribution to this, that could be your front line, you know.
And I have one more thought, because sometimes we are asked what we advise students to do. And I agree with Magda that it's important to build on your talents. And in the war situation, it's also super difficult to give wise advice, right? Because it's extreme situation. And as Brunon said, it does not have to be heroic, but it's important to do something. And from my perspective, if I could give you also one more advice, is because you are all students, right? You focus on your education, you want to contribute to the society going forward. But this should not be only 100% of what you do. My advice is to be vocal. When something is wrong, be vocal. Because this situation is wrong. I am not expert in geopolitics. For the last 25 years, I was most excited talking about my work. And I focus on this and other elements in my life. But in those moments, you cannot be oblivious, right? And you are at Western universities, and we see that the world is right now on the fence because there are hard times linked to economy. So it's much easier to think about the comfort and forget about the war. And I know that there is a risk that next year or in 2 years, people will become tired and will forget about the war. And my advice to you is your role at universities, at the students' community could be to be vocal, that everybody has responsibility in their life to be vocal when something is wrong.
Thank you very much. I mean, we've heard about the importance of mentorship, being vocal. Is there anything that you think can be done to avoid perhaps some of the mistakes of the past? Unfortunately, we've had a lot of wars, lots of efforts to reconstruct. Not all of them have been as successful for the countries affected as others. Some of these countries, in fact, returned to war shortly after a war, partly because reconstruction did not happen or not happen enough. What is it that you think can be learned from that and be put right to prepare a brighter future for Ukraine?
I'm happy to begin, but I'm sure others have a view. There are several things. I think Ukrainian case is both similar and different to other cases, and I think Ukraine is fortunate, first of all, that it is in the center of Europe, and it gained, with Polish support, strong Polish support, the right to have the European future. And I believe very strongly as an economist, as a professional who studied development for a long time, that the magnet of European integration cannot be overstated. I know London is not maybe the place where everybody views it that way, but of course the quality of institution improves, you know, all of that process can drive change. Second, Ukraine, and probably in that respect it's somewhat similar to other post-conflict countries, needs to focus on its rule of law and quality of government. And it is very well understood in Ukraine because it's become a matter of life and death. And so in that respect, there's a lot of pressure to make things right. Unfortunately, we had 3 Maidans, 3 revolutions, and it hasn't yet. And I think of this almost as the last Maidan, you know? It turns out that one party, geopolitical party, was always on the other side, and we always knew it, but now it's clear. You know, there's no more ifs and buts. But I think Ukraine needs to fix its rule of law and the governance. And finally, of course, there will be a need to set up a system that effectively uses resources, because the resources will come, and they will come either from friendly countries or from these frozen assets, or you name it, or from private sector. But I think there is a need to set up an agile and effective system. There's a lot of talk about Marshall Plan for Ukraine, how to do it right, and you know, there are institutions, including like EBRD, that are there available to support Ukraine, but it needs to be well designed and organized so there's no waste of time. And there is a lot going on right now, a lot of conversations about this to make it work better than in other cases.
Anybody else want to say something on this?
I would agree with Alex. I would say that my assessment is what everybody did was outstanding, because you ask what could be done better. I would think that both on Ukrainian side, it's amazing what Ukraine did, fighting for the peace of the whole world. What Western world did also is amazing, that Europe is unified and US is engaged, and there are big donors like US, UK, Microsoft, Poland, and all the countries. I think that maybe the biggest mistake was done before the war, to be oblivious, that we kind of close our eyes on other activities of Putin in Georgia and in many other places. And right now, this is what I also hear, that Ukraine, one thing could do better is to adhere to Western legal system quicker, because the donors will give more money if they know it's well spent. It cannot be spent. It cannot be spent by Western people. It has to be spent by Ukrainians, but with the lots of rules of law. And West, what could do even better is to be even quicker and more decisive in some actions.
And in terms of there's a public-private involvement, how do you guarantee a balance? We were talking about the possibility that people get tired, or or at least not as engaged. How do you guarantee that there is the right balance, that this is not just driven by big ticket spending?
You can't guarantee that. It's hard work. It's like, you know, when I talk to the NGOs that in Poland that are very busy with the migrant crisis, they are all saying, like, it's a marathon. That's not even a marathon. It's an ultra marathon. Okay, and we need to be prepared that it's not going to be easier. Every month we will be more tired. Every month our bills will go up. Every month there will be some sort of things that are not the way we would want to. And again, it is for us to decide whether we will give up and say, like, okay, let me go back to our comfortable bubble, because a lot of people can still afford that, or we will continue doing the right thing and paying the discomfort related to it. And I do believe that this audience here has a great opportunity and responsibility to walk the talk on that. Because as Franek said, the Western world is not as close to what is happening in Ukraine as your families in Poland are. If you walk in the cities in Poland now, you hear Polish and you hear Ukrainian, and that was always the case, but not to that magnitude. And that's gonna be our new reality for years to come. And yeah, let's be patient and let's train the help muscle.
Alex?
Something to add more, maybe almost a technical aspect of it, and that is Ukraine will likely be under some form of threat, a bit maybe like Israel, let's say, for some time to come. Of course, it depends on what happens in Russia, which is a big question. How will Russia What is Russian future? And it's also a very big and important question for the world. You know, when the war started, I had two questions. Oh my God, what will happen with my country? And the second one, what will happen with Russia? You know, because it is really tragic what's happening in Russia. But as long as there is a threat, there will be a need for Ukraine to set up also, with support, I think, of Western partners, some mechanism to ensure that all of this transformation support does not become purely a state-driven, government-driven process, but the private sector plays a role, and there is emergence of new SMEs, middle-sized companies growth. And we are already, and even in my team, are thinking really hard and engaged in thinking about setting up war insurance mechanisms, some kind of instruments like indeed that have been done in other countries like Israel and elsewhere, to make sure that there is, in addition to all these reforms, and we hope rule of law, there are other more technical solutions so people sooner rather than later begin comfortable with investing again and driving development of the country. And coming back again, I think that I hope that people even in this audience will have a role to play in that. It's a more optimistic, more positive, I hope, you know, scenario, let's say, not just about the war.
Before we started this conversation, I had the chance to speak with 3 students who are finishing right now, or close to finishing, undergraduate studies here in the UK. All 3 told me they would try to continue studying in the UK, even though the UK has made it harder and a lot more expensive to study here since Brexit. In general, you have also, most of us have had the opportunity to study in another country. What are your thoughts on the pluses and minuses, let's say, in the Polish experience of having had so many people have that foreign experience in their education, and what could a country like Ukraine get from a similar situation?
Maybe I can start. What I think it's important to expose people to other cultures and other studies. I remember we met the ambassador of Ukraine, and he said, "What did you have any plan to kind of educate Ukrainians that Ukraine should be independent? Did you invest in any educational system?" And he said, "No. The only thing we did, we gave the passports." That was the only thing we did. Putin never gave passports to all the Russians, right? You can only find oligarchs and some exceptions. And I think this is also important to be exposed to studying, as you said, to have this experience. I remember when in 90s I was studying in UK, it was very unusual for Poles to study in Western Europe. It was quite hard, and I was jealous seeing in Liège people from all over the Western Europe, from France, from Italy, from everywhere, and it was like one big happy family. And right now I hear the same stories from our Ukrainian colleagues in the office, that they see that Poles can study everywhere, and they would like to have the same experience for Ukrainians to be able to go and study in Stockholm or in London. They look at us, at Poles, and they hope it would come also one day, like it came to us. And I think this is super important, because then they come back with this, you know, isolation equals no progress. You just have to kill isolation.
Anybody else have thoughts on
I just believe that this is a classic example for great things that happen with diversity. You know, the more diversity, the more benefits coming to the organization, to the family, to the student, to the university, to the country, etc. So I see this talent migration as part of the driving the diversity economy. Which by default is good. It might be difficult sometimes, but it's good. I did not have a chance to study in London, but I have a chance to work in London for 2 years, 2 amazing years of my life. And I do believe that what I am doing now, what I am doing now in Poland is, I am using that experience, that 2 years in London, and it is a benefit, and it's a capital that I am leveraging for the benefit of my organization.
I'm going to add a little bit of, maybe a bit of a personal story. You know, I grew up in the Soviet Union, and I wanted to be a diplomat, and I studied English kind of by myself. I asked my parents to send this evening program, and everybody looked at me as an alien. They thought I'm crazy. I will never visit abroad. Why are you studying English? And I kept going and going, and then I went to university. I didn't end up studying diplomacy, partly because of the whole nature of the Soviet university system, where I realized it's impossible. But then one day I met for the first time a native speaker of English, and I realized I'm fluent. It was that type of experience. It's like you were in a bubble, like literally behind the wall. And I was like, oh my God, I am fluent. And then I ended up, because of that, I ended up in the first cohort of the former Soviet students going to study abroad. In fact, I was the first at Harvard to, probably one of the first to finish master's, one of the first to finish PhD. And I would tell you that even in this war, when the war started, the value of the networks I developed at that time, it was remarkable, because the things I did in my free time and connections I mobilized, they really helped to leapfrog certain processes. And it was my personal contribution, but it really showed the importance of these networks we develop and the knowledge, and also people view you as a regular part of the international liberal community. And so we do need to have more Ukrainian students in Western universities. We do also need to transform the Ukrainian university system, and that's happening. There are new universities open up, like just before the war, American University opened up. There's a very good Catholic university in Lviv. There are multiple schools opening up, and they're creating pressure on the legacy system to make it better, more, more westernized, let's say. But I would say this is something that is organic. We must have both.
Brunon, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, because from one hand, of course, we are still feeling the suffering of Ukrainians. But at the same time, just let me go for another fairy tale, okay? You, of course, are students. What are students' studies time for? Of course, apart from having lots of fun, it's, of course, learning how to deal with other people and get prepared for proving your abilities and skills in real life. Real fun in life, I can tell you, is to build something by yourself for the others and be proud of that. And then think about this, what is the situation that Ukrainians shortly will be? They will have an opportunity to build a new country with leapfrogging technology, which, as you know, we are idiots not using technology fully to make our life much easier and much better. Look at, I don't know, health system, right? So technology is there, but we are idiots not to use it, and we are still living in a different manner. Ukraine was not the perfect country before the war. Sorry to say that. No country is, but Ukraine was not. Ukraine is having a chance to solve a lot of issues and problems that Ukraine was facing by this fact of being rebuilding. And look how many opportunities for small business, medium-sized business from neighboring countries are coming, especially when recession is knocking on our door and suddenly there is a paradise. Ukraine will benefit, but everybody else will benefit in line with. And you students, you will be looking and just watching and learning what mistakes your parents and grandparents did during the crisis in Ukraine, how they were not able to identify friends and foes, how stupid we are and naive, understanding the 2014, it's just a event without any consequences. So learn that, but at the same time, think how you can use the skills that you are learning in the world when the new, sorry for saying that, Wild East is opening. We were using that phrase for Poland in the 90s. We were using that Poland is the new Wild East. It's such a pleasure to build something and then say, we did it. In our life, not every generation is having such a chance. So there is a chance once the war is over, even if Russia will still be melting and trying to get influence, they will not stop. But don't forget, they are trying to influence the life of other countries as well. And once again, maybe I will add now, to be very precise, Russia is not the only empire which is at the moment trying to influence the world, because the world is looking the new balance, as you know. So let's be frank and honest with that. But opportunities which are for the Ukrainians, as long as we will treat Ukraine and Ukrainians as part of our community, now and forever, maybe not the NATO members, but EU, why not, right? NATO, maybe a few years later, but that will be a fantastic opportunity. Just think from that perspective how wonderful life could be if we will not allow the bad guys to melt and influence us too much. That's why it's very important for you also to understand which side are you on and get passionate and engaged, okay? So, I envy you, but don't forget, my generation was having that privilege, but people who are 10 years older than you, they didn't. They only had to live in the boring time of corporate life. In front of you is, again, a beautiful life of exploring and finding out something new.
And to build on it, we are entering a season, guys, where, in particular, because of all the holidays, we will experience between now and January. I think it's a good moment to get this extra empowerment to do that. So, you know, maybe there is something you can do that you were not planning to do for your Ukrainian friends in December. We may have Christmas on different dates, but you know, we celebrate Christmas twice. Yeah, that's true.
Already.
So these are some, you know, I think it will be I know it will be a very difficult time for any Ukrainian to go through the joy of holiday season. Help them in this difficult time, double difficult for them, because they may be here and have a party with you, but you know their families are somewhere in Ukraine, and you never know what kind of hell is going on there. So, you know, action, some extra power still this season.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up. As I said, fun, action, but also lunch. So I thank you so much. I think we've heard a lot of, I've got a lot of inspiration from what was said by our panelists. I hope you also have. Remember the privilege you have to be students and the opportunities you have to be perhaps getting close to the end of your studies at such a turning point for Ukraine, for the world, really. So thank you very much again. Thanks to the organizers for the opportunity, and best of luck to Ukraine and to all of you. Thank you.
But it would be great if you could wait, because it's not time for lunch. Before the lunch, we have a presentation, the main part, I think, of our conference, the strategic partner of Poland Summit. Franek, the floor is open for you and for some details about Empower projects.
Yeah.
Yes, just one question, okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that great panel. I wanted to ask a question about that mistakes in the past, because as far as I know, in the recent years, the greatest part in investments in Ukraine was made by Russia. And I wanted to ask, why didn't we invest more to prevent the situation that happened? And I would like to ask the second question. Obviously, the war will probably take a bit longer than we all maybe expected. Well, actually, it will be just one question. Thank you.
Shall we try to answer? I think that the mistake we did is that we didn't think that it's all about economy war. It's not military war. It's military war. When we talk to military experts, Putin does not want to win military. He wants Ukraine. We talked to really investigated it quite a lot. He wants Ukraine to go bankrupt. He wants Ukraine to have no money. That there is budget deficit, there is no investment, that people are scared to put money. And I think mistakes we didn't support economically Ukraine enough. I think this is my perspective, and it's so important right now to support Ukraine economically, because it's economical war. It costs lots of money to survive winter, to invest into transport, invest into gas and water, and I think historically Ukraine lacked investment. This is what Poland benefited and Central Eastern Europe.
Let me face.
I'm sorry.
It's for luck. That's for luck.
That's for luck, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
it's for
guaranteed
luck.
now. It's guaranteed.
It means that
now.
it's an important question.
Let me state that. In life, sometimes you are having the situation when there is a territory which one side is using and trying to assess that by criteria, being economic criteria, and the other one is looking at that as the place when you are playing the geopolitical game. And unfortunately, and don't forget, even until this moment, Ukraine, in eyes of the European Union, is still considered as high-risk country. And it was, before the war, for many years. Why? Because of instability, corruption, and some other elements. So for us, Ukraine was a country next door, right? For Russia, it is a buffering country. That's a different approach. Should we, as Europeans, change the mind and try play the game of imperia? No, but defense, and obviously that will be concentrated on buffering countries, the history is showing it was always the case. But we didn't consider Russia as foes, we considered Russia as the partner. And that's a geopolitical mistake, as it proved. But it's easy to assess post factum, right? That's the situation. So Russia was doing their plan, and we were not seeing that. We should have. Yes, we should, but we didn't.
Someone said that people prefer to believe than to know. I believe that in case of the Ukraine war, we preferred not to believe than to know the facts and to connect all the dots, and hence the surprise.
Well, fact really is, because now sometimes it's really also not to talk really politically. We Europeans were pushing Ukrainians away from European Union ambition on big part of European society, as we push Turkish, for different reasons. For different reasons. Is it mistake? Is it right decision? History will prove us, but we don't know. But did we do that as Europeans? Yes, we did.
And one more thing, it was just easier. And this is about the choices, right? It was just easier. Someone said that the peace in Europe was a free lunch cooked on Russian gas. And it was just easier to do it that way. And I think that sometimes it's important to do things which are not easier.
Thank you again. I'm very grateful, and of course, I'm sorry to tell you that lunch is not immediately there. So that was my mistake. It's not cooked on Russian gas. It's just my mistake. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention. I think that the panel not only about the future of about a young, just final word, that panel not only about the empower of young generation, but also about the empower of our future. Thank you very much. And Franek, for you, the floor is open.